Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over this 10-part presentation on the ASP.NET MVC3 MusicStore. I've been trying to update it from MVC3 to MVC5. Again, we've gone over Part 1, which was our overview and where we created the project, Part 2, where we learned about controllers, and we just completed Part 3, which was on views and view models. In Part 4, as you can see right here, we're going to talk about models and data access, and the idea is that we're going to try now to hook up a database to this. This will be interesting because we've used database first in the past, and now we're going to be using code first because we've already written our code. So, without any further ado, as they say, let's jump into Part 4. So, as I mentioned at the end of the previous lecture, and I'm saying it again now, we've been using dummy data. We had to manually type things in. That's not very real life. So as mentioned here, we're ready to try to hook up a real database. So in this tutorial, we'll be covering how to do that. All right. Now, as mentioned, we're going to use the entity framework support that's included. It's still included in MVC5 to query and update the database. The entity framework is a flexible object relational data model. API that allows you to query and update data in an object-oriented way. You don't have to really even worry about it because what it's saying in English is that what we learned when we first learned databases, we learned SQL. Well, we're still going to be using SQL, but we're going to be doing it using code. All right? All right, and just like Entity Framework version 4, version 6.2, which is what we're doing, uses what's called a developer paradigm that's called code first. You can either use code first, where you write the code and then basically kind of hook up the database, or you can use database first, where you create the database and then add the code. All right. As it says, we've already been doing this. We've already been writing simple classes known as POCO for plain old CLR objects. CLR is Common Language Runtime. And basically, it's the internal mechanism that Microsoft uses to convert your program eventually down into machine language that the computer can understand. Now that's taking a very complex subject and boiling it down to about a sentence. All right. It can even create the database on the fly from your classes. We'll be leveraging the database creation feature in the entity framework model here. Before we do that, we have to make some minor changes to our model classes to add some things we'll be using later on. So, our albums class will be associated with artists, so we're going to add a simple model class to describe an artist. So we're going to add an artist class to our models folder, and the inside will look like this. So let's copy that. Then let's go over to here. Let's go back to our Solution Explorer. I'm going to close because I've got so darn many things open here. Oops, I don't want to pin that. I want to remove that. Oops. Like I said, I'm just trying to clean this up just a little bit here. Leave that output window open. There we go. Now it's much, much cleaner than it was. There's only a window or two open. So I'm going to right mouse click, add class. Make sure I'm going to use the same verbiage. So I want to call it artist. And again, this is what I'm going to put inside of it. So we want artist.cs. Notice as soon as we click add in just a minute, we're going to have an artist.cs in there. And there it is. And here it is. So there it is. Each artist has an ID and each artist has a name. All right, so we've done our first thing here. Update the album class as shown. So the album class should look like this. All right, let's do this. Let's update it and then go back and talk about it, okay? All right, so we want to go back to our code and go to album.cs, and that currently has just a title and a genre. That's all it has. Well, notice what it has now. Still got the title, still has the genre, but we've added album ID, genre ID, artist ID. This is going to be basically a link table that's going to allow us to link information up rather from various the various tables. All right, let's just save this too. Now we're going to go back here. Next, we have to make the following changes to our genre class. All right, so let's go back into here. Let's open up genre. We have only a name in there right now. We're adding more fields, so we're going to have not just a name, but a genre ID, a description, and our list of albums. Okay, we're basically getting this database ready, for lack of better words. All right, now we're supposed to add an app data folder, and that may be in here already, but we'll see. We've got an app data folder. Good. Now remember, this is version 3, so you may have had to have done that back in version 3. App data is our special directory in ASP.NET, which is what we use to hold our databases. That's nothing new there. All right. We'll add a few lines to the website's configuration file so that the entity framework knows how to connect to our database. Double-click the web config at the bottom of the project, and we're supposed to add this. Now, I'm going to make some changes to this. They have SDF. I have never seen an SDF file, so I'm going to put in MDF. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to do. So we want to add this right at the bottom. It says here, directly above the last line. So this is our web config down here. Come down to the very bottom, and right before our configuration, I'm going to put in that. Now, a couple things. Well, first, I don't need that configuration part. There. So that's first thing. MusicStore entities, fine. Looks like that'll, let's see. So this is MusicStore, will be MusicStore.mdf. And I'm hoping that 4.0 is okay. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. But I can probably figure that out. And the way I can figure that out is I can go back and try to find one of our older projects. Let's see. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause while I do this, so you don't have to watch me scurry through this, and I'll be back in just a minute. Well, I've decided just to plow through with what I've got. Okay, so I've got that in. Right mouse click on the models folder and add a new class named MusicStoreEntities.cs. All right. Go over to our models folder. Let's close this. I put this in. We'll do a save all. Close that. Right mouse click in the models folder. Add class. And that class will be MusicStoreEntities.cs. There it is. I imagine we're going to put something in here, so I'll open that up. This class will represent the entity framework database context. All right, and it will handle all of our create, read, etc. So the code for this is shown right here. Okay, so this is what we want. This is all of it. So let's go in and change our code, which does not look like that right now, so that it looks like this. All right. Now you'll notice I'm getting these errors, so if I put and hover over here, I'm going to need to add a using statement, system.data.entity. All right. So it added this, and that got rid of my errors. But let's take a quick look, not even that quick, but let's take a look at what's in here. All right. Again, we came in and we added what's called a context class. All right. The database context class will do a lot of work behind the scenes for us, and as it says, it represents the entity framework database context. It's going to handle all of the CRUD, create, read, update, and delete operations for us. And the only thing that we need in here is to basically tell what it is we're working with. And notice by extending the DB context base class, our MusicStore entities are now able to handle all of the operations for us. All right. Now that we've got that hooked up, it says let's add a few more properties to our model classes to take advantage of some additional information in our database. Again, I have no guarantee that all this is going to work when I get done. I can only hope. All right, so I'm a little bit behind here on my piece of paper, so we're going to add our store catalog data. We will take advantage of a feature in the entity framework which adds seed data to a newly created database. This will pre-populate our store catalog with a list of genres, a list of artists, and a list of albums. Our file that I'm going to give you, as it says, is going to include something called sampledata.cs. Alright, so I've got to find that, so I'm going to come here. I think I'm doing this the right way. Alright, and where do we want this? We want this in our models. Okay, so I'm going to come into our models, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to choose Add Existing Item. Now unfortunately I have to find it, so it's on the desktop. I think it's an MVC MusicStore master, but I'm not sure. Completed. MusicStore. Models. And we have to find, what was it? I'm sorry. Sampledata.cs. So hopefully that's in there. There's sampledata.cs. And click Add. And there it is. Now that wasn't too painful. What's in there? Notice there's a lot of stuff in there. Alright. So there's a bunch of albums, there's a bunch of artists, there's a bunch of genres. And I'm not worried about those squigglies. Alright? Hopefully. At least not yet, I'm not. Alright. So within the code models folder, I did that. I dropped it in. That was everything I was supposed to do. Now we need to add one line of code to tell the entity framework about that class. So we need to be able to link up that class. Alright, that's probably why we're getting the errors. So it says double click the global.asx file and add the following line to the top of it, which is right here. Okay, so let's see if that fixes the problem we have. You notice all the squigglies. I'm going to open up the global ASAX file, and in here for my application start, I'm going to add that file, right, or that line of code. It's broken up over 2 lines. And I'm going to save all. Now when I go back to my sample data, well, I still have the squigglies, so that's not a good thing. Saving all. At this point, we've completed the work necessary to configure the entity framework for our project. Alright, now let's update our store controller so that instead of using dummy data, alright, it calls our database to query all of its information. We'll start by declaring a field on the store controller, so right up at the top, to hold an instance of our MusicStore entities class. So I will have to go into the storecontroller.cs file to do this. Alright, so right at the top here. Alright, and that's good that we didn't get any errors, so it's recognizing that MusicStore entities file that we created down here. Alright, so that's a start. The MusicStore entities class is maintained by the entity framework and exposes a collection property for each table in the database. Let's update the store controller's index method to retrieve all of the genres. Previously we did this by hard coding the string data. Now we can just use the entity framework context. Okay, so we want to go into the store controller's index method. So we're still in the store controller. Okay. Now we had hard coded these in. Now we're going to replace that with this. A lot more compact, and what's nice about it is what it's doing is it's telling it to go out and search the database for us. Alright, okay. No changes need to happen to our view template since we're returning the same thing as before. We're just returning live data from the database now. So we should run the project again and visit the store URL. And ideally, we're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll see rock, jazz, metal, alternative, disco, indie music, Latin, dance, blues, and classical. And I believe that, well, I'll just follow the steps that are in here. So I'm hoping that once we do a build and we rebuild the solution, that when I come back here, well, that's not a good sign, as you can see. Wow. And my guess is it all has to do with what we talked about before, the fact that it's not recognizing that class. Darn it. So that's what the problem is it's not recognizing the MusicStore entities. So using MusicStore models, does that, well, that's always nice when you fix something by doing something like that. So let's rebuild the solution. Notice they all look like they've gone away, which is great. All right. So I'm going to go back to my store index file. I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to choose View in Browser. Now if this works, I'm going to get 10 different genres. Okay, no entity framework provided for the, okay, what this says is that it doesn't like what we added. So what we added there was old. So I'm going to have to go back and find that. I was just hoping it would work without it. So let's see, I'm at 17 minutes. And what do I have left to do? After I get done with this, I still have a bit of work to do. So I'm going to break this part 4 up into a couple different lectures. And I will try to come back with a better connection string line and meld together what the author has put in with what I think we need to put in for what we're working with now. All right, so ideally we're going to come back and finish up the chapter 4 portion in just a couple minutes.